Welcome to Season 4 of the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today we're going to talk about customer experience and employee experience and how these are forever unified. Businesses face increasing expectations from both customers and employees. In the case of customers, experience has become a key point of differentiation among brands. When experience is improved, customers win, but this also sets the bar higher with each interaction. Employees also value a great experience and reward companies that understand this with greater engagement and productivity. Notably, they're willing to leave their employers when they don't feel valued, evidenced during what many have referred to as the Great Resignation. When employee experience is stellar, it translates into better customer experiences, which unifies the two types of experience into a singular goal for improvement. This is demonstrated through better customer service, more innovative products and services, and greater customer satisfaction with frontline employee interactions. When employee experience suffers, however, this relationship between customer and employee experience is strained as well. There's a lot at stake. This includes everything from customer loyalty, retention, and lifetime value to employee engagement and retention. Leading companies understand customer and employee experience as a unified element and benefit from a lift that occurs when both are done well and in coordination with one another. I recently wrote a guide for Medallia called Forever Unified, Customer and Employee Experience, to dive deeper on this topic. The guide is now available for download on Medallia.com, and there's a link in the show notes for this podcast. For the show today, and to help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome David Ostberg, Solutions Principal of Employee Experience at Medallia. Why should CX professionals and other leaders pay attention to the employee experience as well?
I imagine you've heard this from other medallions, but we often say employee behaviors create customer experiences. Much of what a customer experiences is based on, hey, what was the employee doing? What were they saying? How were they acting? What was their attitude, their tone, their sentiment? It's a shared experience between two human beings or more. And of course, those things are inextricably linked. So they, reflect on one another, and also vice versa. If a customer is really upset or really grumpy, that makes for a difficult experience for the employee. So, it's a two-way thing. And one of the things that I think is great about Medallia being so deep into both customer experience and employee experience is that, again, they reflect on one another, and it's really us who creates this sort of artificial barrier between the two. When we're talking about measuring behaviors and experiences or getting feedback from customers or from employees, it's really us, traditionally that draws that artificial barrier that doesn't need to be there. Data is data and feedback is data. So we can look at, how those things relate to one another. And at the end of the day, an employee or a customer, we're all just human beings. We have expectations and wants in terms of how we're treated and what we expect from an organization. So drawing that barrier is unnecessary. And we can really learn a lot by looking at relationships between measurements, metrics, and feedback across the employee and customer experiences.
How do customers benefit from a company that has more engaged employees?
Well, more engaged employees tend to have better attitudes. They tend to be more motivated. That is the definition of engagement. Do they feel like they can contribute? Do they feel excited? More engaged employees tend to be more innovative and empowered to make decisions. So that directly impacts, what experience the customer has. If they call and talk to, through a contact center or something, they interact with someone who's disengaged, that person, that employee is unlikely or less likely, I should say, to really go above and beyond or try to problem solve to help that person in that first interaction. On the other hand, someone who's highly engaged will likely have a very positive attitude, will likely go to greater lengths to solve the customer's problem or help them get what they need or make recommendations, and also just be more innovative in how they solve problems. So it's just you get people who are more interested, more employees who are more interested in really creating a positive experience for that customer.
Great.
And that then in turn creates larger purchases, more frequent buying, more positive recommendations and word of mouth about that brand. So it really, it's a snowball effect.
So let's then talk about how to measure the connection between customer and employee experience. So what do leading brands understand about the connection between CX and EX?
Yep. First of all, I think leading brands, progressive brands, understand the value of measurement and feedback. And also beyond just measuring and understanding what our customers experiencing and what our employees experiencing, but also they understand the value and importance of being really responsive and being agile in their responses. If a customer has a poor experience and the company reaches out and says, "Hey, we understand that you didn't have a great experience today," and we want to make sure we understand what that was. If that happens that same day, that creates an opportunity for actually building a stronger relationship with that customer. If they wait a month out, that's a totally different experience. The customer might not even remember what the specific details of the experience were. They just know that I was frustrated. No one listened to me. There was no resolution. And the same thing happens with employees. It's really, really valuable not to just ask employees what's going well and what the challenges are that they're facing, but be able to respond to those in a really timely fashion. If you can change something that's creating friction for an employee within that same week, as opposed to, "Hey, we want to find out about this 6 months later in our biannual survey," it just creates a much different feel in terms of feeling valued, feeling heard, and seeing things change in your environment that actually make your work life better.
Yeah, so time to action and is critical, and therefore the tools to measure time to action, or the tools to enable greater time to action, I would imagine, are come into play there too.
Exactly. And another piece, I suppose, is not just asking pointed questions about the customer experience or employee experience, but actually asking open-ended questions to say, "Hey, what do you want to tell us about what we should know about your experiences here, if it's today or this week or whatever, on either side?" Open it up and make sure that you've got technology that can identify what themes people are talking about in open-ended comments and in open feedback, to create that sort of culture of feedback on either side, customer or employee. So especially employees know that they can share whatever they want to, rather than just waiting for a survey that's about a specific topic and that's all they get to talk about.
How would you characterize that? I don't know if it's philosophy of measurement, or just, it's not just a survey after the fact, or it's not just, very strict set of measurements and more open-ended, but, how would you characterize that way of thinking about measurement?
Well, we think of it as what we call continuous understanding. So, there are many organizations out there that say, "Hey, we want to measure this, we want to listen." It's like, okay, well, you have to go beyond that. You have to be able to identify what are those critical insights and what are those really important things your people or your customers are trying to tell you, and then connect that to response and action. Again, being very timely on those things. So I think for the last 2 to 3 decades in the employee experience space, people have talked about the importance of employee listening or even continuous listening, but it's really about continuous understanding and action. If people share something with you they care about or they're frustrated about, and you say, "We hear you," and then you don't do anything, that's actually worse than not asking in the first place.
So then we'll move from continuously understanding to continuous improvement. And so what do successful brands do to stay ahead and stay competitive and continuously improve their customer experience and employee experience?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all about having the right tools in place to understand what your customers and your employees are telling you, and being able to get those insights, that data, and that feedback to the people, the departments, the leaders, the frontline people who can actually do something about it in the moment or close to the moment. In employee experience, typically, the burden of taking action on, say, survey feedback, engagement feedback, well being, whatever, typically falls on the HR and people teams. And that's just too narrow focused. It's not, employee experience does not just fall onto HR and people teams. Employee experience needs to be owned by the entire organization, by all leaders, by all departments, and really progressive organizations understand that. So key thing is have a technology that when someone's talking about a specific topic in the employee experience, if it's an issue with tools or technology, that feedback goes to maybe the IT department or maybe operations. If it's something related to another issue, it goes to the appropriate person or department that can take action on it, as opposed to HR is expected to get through all of it, figure it out, and then do something org-wide with it. Most employees would rather see action in the moment related to that specific issue that week, rather than, we're going to try to make a huge organizational shift, 4 months down the road or 6 months down the road. And same things with, customers like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, and so I would imagine also, in addition to getting the information to those, to the relevant folks, it's also about the kind of reporting that it makes it actionable, right? So it makes it understandable, and it takes all the numbers and crunches them and then puts it in a format that someone knows what to do with it, right?
Exactly. Really good point. So having customized, specifically tailored dashboards for those different users, what a people analytics manager cares about, regarding the employee experience and the amount of information they get, will and should look pretty different than, say, the leader of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or the leader of a technology or contact center group. And especially down to managers or individual employees, with managers who aren't necessarily deeply trained on how to drive or do people analytics, interpret complicated reports, and then take action. You want to say, hey, here are the 3 things that are going really well with your team. Here are the 3 things that your people said they'd like to see improved. And here are some ideas people have. Here are recommendations for how to start conversations with your team about exploring these things. So yeah, really good point about having customized, focused insights in the feedback mechanism or reports.
I'd like to thank David Ostberg, Solutions Principal, Employee Experience at Medallia, for joining the show. You can learn more about the new guide, Forever Unified Customer and Employee Experience, by going to medallia.com or this podcast's website, www.theagilebrand.show. Thanks for listening to The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.